The Zarkarth believed themselves invincible. For centuries, they had expanded their dominion, conquering species after species with little resistance. They viewed humanity as another primitive civilization, barely worth the effort of conquest. When their warships descended upon Earth, they came not with offers of diplomacy but with demands for submission. The Zarkarth were efficient, cold, and methodical. To them, humanity's resistance was an amusing display of stubbornness destined to fail. Cities fell within weeks. Entire continents were reduced to rubble, their populations enslaved or eradicated. The Zarkarth didn't waste resources unnecessarily. Their primary goal was to strip Earth of its resources and transform it into another outpost in their galactic empire. The survivors were herded into labor camps, their spirits crushed under the weight of alien oppression. Broadcasts looped endlessly, reminding humanity that resistance was futile. "Your leaders have abandoned you," the voices declared in fluent but mechanical English. "Accept your fate, for the Zarkarth do not forgive rebellion." Among the survivors, whispers spread of humanity's last days. Resistance fighters tried to mount counterattacks, but their weapons were obsolete against the Zarkarth's advanced technology. Drones patrolled the skies, vaporizing anything that moved. Humanity's once great armies were reduced to scattered groups of desperate fighters, hiding in underground bunkers and derelict cities. Despite the overwhelming odds, hope lingered in pockets of defiance. Resistance radios crackled with faint transmissions, coded messages exchanged between cells still fighting in secret. But even these brave souls knew the truth: humanity was losing. Every day brought another defeat, another atrocity committed by the Zarkarth. They had stripped humanity of everything: freedom, safety, even hope. The alien commanders, stationed in orbit aboard massive warships, monitored Earth with disinterest. The Zarkarth were used to such scenarios. The oppressed always clung to desperate hopes, to myths of salvation that never materialized. For all their intelligence and adaptability, humans were just another species to be conquered, another addition to the Zarkarth's empire. Yet, amidst the despair, something stirred. In hidden facilities buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, something old, something primal, was being awakened. The Zarkarth had assumed they knew everything about humanity, its strengths, its weaknesses, its limits. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have anticipated, was that humanity had prepared for this. They had created something not even the Zarkarth could fully comprehend. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a garbled transmission intercepted by the aliens. It was in human language, but the words made little sense. "The wolves are awake," it said. The alien commanders dismissed it as gibberish, perhaps a last-ditch effort by humans to spread confusion. But then reports started to filter in: small patrols vanishing without a trace, outposts destroyed with no survivors. The Zarkarth were efficient, but their efficiency had blinded them. They had underestimated humanity's ingenuity, its unpredictability. The wolves were awake, and the Zarkarth were about to learn the true meaning of fear. The first encounter left no survivors. An alien patrol, stationed at the edge of a devastated human city, vanished overnight. Their last transmission was nothing but static and faint growls. When reinforcements arrived, all they found were scraps of armor, deep claw marks gouged into metal walls, and blood. Alien blood. The Zarkarth, unaccustomed to fear, dismissed it as sabotage by desperate resistance fighters. But as more reports of similar attacks flooded in, their confidence began to falter. Entire squads disappeared without explanation. Bases were breached, their defenses rendered useless, with nothing but faint traces of destruction left behind. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't human soldiers. It was something else, something they couldn't see coming. The wolves were more than just weapons, they were predators. Designed in the darkest days of the war, they were humanity's response to extinction. Genetically engineered and augmented, they were built for one purpose: to hunt and kill. Part human, part beast, they combined the cunning of human intellect with the raw power and instincts of apex predators. Silent, relentless, and merciless, they were the embodiment of everything the Zarkarth had failed to account for. Their bodies were masterpieces of bioengineering. Enhanced musculature gave them the strength to tear through alien alloys with ease. Their senses were razor-sharp, allowing them to track prey even in total darkness. Neural implants allowed them to communicate wordlessly, coordinating their attacks with military precision. But it was their intelligence that made them truly terrifying. They didn't just follow orders, they adapted. They learned. And they hunted with a cold, calculated efficiency that mirrored, and surpassed, the Zarkatha's own methods. The wolves didn't just strike at random. They targeted critical supply lines, communication hubs, and command centers. They left no survivors, no witnesses to warn others of what was coming. The Zarkatha's advanced technology, so effective against human resistance fighters, was useless against them. The wolves moved faster than sensors could track, striking from shadows and disappearing before reinforcements could respond. The Zarkath commanders were unnerved. They had prided themselves on their ability to dominate through superior firepower and organization. Now, they faced an enemy that operated outside the bounds of their understanding. An enemy they couldn't predict. Panic began to spread among their ranks. Soldiers reported seeing glowing eyes in the darkness, hearing guttural growls that seemed to come from nowhere. Even the most hardened warriors began to hesitate, their confidence eroded by an enemy they couldn't fight. Despite their fear, the Zarkath tried to adapt. They deployed more drones, reinforced their outposts, and doubled their patrols. But it didn't matter. The wolves couldn't be stopped. For every trap the Zarkath set, the wolves dismantled it with brutal precision. They struck where the Zarkath were weakest, tearing through their forces with a ruthlessness that defied comprehension. And as the alien commanders scrambled to understand what they were facing, one thing became clear: this was no desperate human bluff. This was war, and humanity had just unleashed its deadliest weapon. The tide was turning, and the Zarkath knew it. What had started as isolated incidents had become a coordinated assault. Alien strongholds that had stood unchallenged for months were falling one by one. The wolves were no longer working alone. Human resistance fighters, emboldened by the chaos the wolves created, were striking back in ways the Zarkath hadn't anticipated. Every attack was calculated. While the wolves disrupted supply lines and wiped out enemy patrols, human forces moved in to reclaim lost ground. Using guerrilla tactics and scavenged alien technology, they began dismantling the Zarkath occupation piece by piece. Underground bunkers once filled with despair now buzzed with activity. Weapons were assembled, strategies drawn, and fighters trained. Humanity had found its edge, and the Zarkatha's arrogance had blinded them to the growing threat. The wolves were more than killers, they were symbols. Stories spread quickly among the human resistance. Some whispered that the wolves weren't creations but ancient protectors awakened to save humanity. Others saw them as proof of humanity's unyielding spirit, a reminder that survival required evolution, no matter the cost. Soldiers who once fought with little hope now fought with fury, their fear replaced by determination. The Zarkath, however, were unraveling. Their forces, once organized and precise, were faltering. Panic spread as reports came in from across the planet, entire garrisons wiped out, communications blacked out, and supply routes obliterated. Their commanders scrambled to maintain order, but fear had already taken root. For the first time in their history, the Zarkath were no longer in control. Even their advanced technology offered no answers. Drones were useless against the wolves, whose speed and agility rendered them invisible to tracking systems. Automated defenses failed to anticipate their movements. The Zarkath had always relied on logic and calculation, but they now faced an enemy that operated on instinct and unpredictability. It was a war they were unprepared to fight. Among the resistance, plans were forming for a final, decisive blow. The alien mothership, hovering in low orbit, was the center of the Zarkatha's operations on Earth. Destroying it would cripple their command structure and force their retreat. It was a nearly impossible task. The mothership was protected by advanced shields and guarded by legions of troops. But the resistance wasn't planning to attack it alone. The wolves would lead the way. There was no debate about the risk. Both the wolves and the humans knew the cost of failure. Some questioned the ethics of the wolves' existence, whispering about the dangers of relying on creations that were as unpredictable as they were powerful. But in the face of extinction, there was no room for hesitation. Humanity had gambled everything on this moment, and the wolves were the key to their survival. The plan was set. The wolves would infiltrate the alien defenses, taking down the shield generators and clearing the path for the resistance to strike. Victory was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: the Zarkath had underestimated humanity. And now, they were about to pay the price. The battle for Earth reached its climax as the Resistance launched their final assault on the Zarkath mothership. The wolves moved first, slipping through enemy defenses with inhuman precision. The alien forces had fortified their positions, deploying their most advanced technology to protect the shield generators. It didn't matter. The wolves tore through the fortifications like they were paper. Silent and unstoppable, they left a trail of destruction that the Zarkath couldn't contain. Inside the mothership, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as Zarkath commanders shouted orders, desperately trying to track the intruders. But the wolves were ghosts, striking and disappearing before anyone could react. They bypassed locked doors, avoided detection systems, and dismantled critical defenses with surgical efficiency. The Zarkath soldiers, trained to face conventional threats, were completely outmatched. Even their elite warriors, armed with the deadliest weapons in the galaxy, found themselves hunted and torn apart in the darkness. Above the chaos, the Resistance launched their offensive. Human fighters in stolen alien crafts and ground forces armed with salvaged Zarkath weapons coordinated their attacks to exploit the wolves' disruptions. The shield generator was their priority. If they could take it down, the Resistance could deliver the killing blow to the mothership. Every step forward came at a cost. Resistance fighters fell, but they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was their last chance. In the final moments, the wolves reached the core of the shield generator. It was heavily guarded, surrounded by layers of alien soldiers and automated defenses. The pack leader, a massive figure with streaks of silver running through its fur, led the charge. It was a feral blur of claws and teeth, tearing through the Zarkath with unrelenting fury. The other wolves followed, creating an opening for the Resistance fighters to plant explosives on the generator. But the Zarkath were desperate. Reinforcements poured in, and the wolves found themselves surrounded. The Resistance fighters couldn't break through the enemy lines to extract them. The pack leader, understanding the stakes, made the ultimate sacrifice. It held its ground, standing between the advancing Zarkath forces and the explosives. The wolves fought alongside their leader, their roars echoing through the corridors as the timer on the explosives counted down. The blast tore through the mothership, shattering its shields and sending shockwaves through the Zarkath fleet. With the defenses down, the Resistance launched their final strike. A barrage of firepower from ground forces and stolen ships targeted the mothership's core. The once mighty vessel, a symbol of Zarkath dominance, erupted in flames, collapsing in a spectacular explosion that lit up the skies. As the debris rained down, the remaining Zarkath forces retreated. Their fleet, now vulnerable and disorganized, jumped to hyperspace, abandoning Earth. The battle was won, but the cost was etched into the faces of every survivor. The wolves had done their part, but only a handful of them remained. In the aftermath, humanity began to rebuild. The wolves, once feared, were now revered as the saviors of Earth. Their loyalty and sacrifice had ensured humanity's survival. And though the scars of war would never fade, one truth remained clear: the Zarkath had underestimated humanity, and it had cost them everything.